All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Planning a Research Trip to New England. My name is Kathleen McKenzie, Education and Programming Manager here at American Ancestors, and I will be moderating today's session. This program is brought to you by the Brew Family Learning Center. American Ancestors is a nonprofit organization supported by our members and donors. We provide resources and expertise in nearly all aspects of family history and are pleased to offer such programming for our friends and for our members and our friends around the world. Our instructor today is Senior Genealogist Rhonda R. McClure. Rhonda is a nationally recognized professional genealogist and lecturer. Before joining American Ancestors in 2006, she ran her own genealogical business for 18 years. She was a contributing editor for Heritage Quest magazine, Biography magazine, and was a contributor to the History Channel magazine and American History magazine. In addition to numerous articles, she is also the author of 12 books, including the award-winning Complete Idiot's Guide to Online Genealogy, Finding Your Famous and Infamous Ancestors, and Digitizing Your Family History. She is also the editor of the sixth edition of the Genealogist Handbook for New England Research. Her areas of expertise are many and include immigration and naturalization, late 19th and early 20th century urban research, missionaries, State Department federal records, New England, of course, as well as the Midwest, Southern, German, Italian, Scottish, Irish, French Canadian, and Atlantic Canadian research. So, it's a common misconception that all family history research can be completed online. In reality, there are treasure troves of undigitized records and resources in libraries and archives that are worth making a trip to in order to take your research to the next level. In this online lecture today, Rhonda will discuss her advice for planning a research trip to New England in particular. She'll provide an overview of key repositories, strategies for planning your research, and tips for how to make the most of your trip. At any point during today's presentation, please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A panel found at the bottom of your screen. We'll address as many of those as we can at the end. There is also an optional syllabus available for purchase if you are interested, and your purchase helps to support us in making these free webinars. This presentation is also being recorded for later viewing on our website and our YouTube channel. So if you missed something on today's first listen, don't worry, you can always go back and review the presentation later. All right, so without further ado, please join me in welcoming Rhonda.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar about coming and visiting great states of New England. Now, a lot of times when I have been at conferences, people have come up and asked if, New York or New Jersey was part of New England. And I have often joked and said, yes, we have annexed them. However, traditionally, New England is the 6 states that you see here listed. I did not put them alphabetically. I actually started with the furthest north being Maine, and then New Hampshire and Vermont that kind of make up a square together, Massachusetts below them, and then Rhode Island and Connecticut that are together below Massachusetts. So these are the what we call or what was originally New England. Before we get into maybe talking about things like, that we're going to talk about later, such as catalogs and whatnot, I want to talk about logistics. When it comes to any kind of a research trip where you're going to go someplace, there are certain things that you do need to consider. And there, because of where New England is located within the United States, there are some things that you may not have to factor into other places you visit. So we're going to talk, consider things like, are you going to stay in a single place? What modes of travel are you going to use to get to various repositories? What are the hours of operation of the repositories? Most importantly, what am I allowed to have at each repository? Do you have all your medicines for the full trip? Yes, it's not like you're going out of the country, but it can sometimes be a kind of a pain if you have to refill a prescription in a place that you're not familiar with. And then based on where New England is, what's the weather going to be like? All right, so first off, let's talk about planning the stay. So, are you flying or driving? If you are flying, then, are you going to rent a car? If you're driving, you know, have you made sure that, your home base, the hotel you're staying at can accommodate your car in parking? Um, do you have a home base hotel or are you actually gonna like hop and skip around different hotels as you visit different places? And then what kinds of modes of transportation are available where you are planning on going? Bus, car, are you going to rely on taxis and Ubers? Is there a subway system or, some other way that you're planning on getting to the different places? If you are driving and you are staying in Boston, you may want to truly consider leaving your car at the hotel and then using other methods to get to the various repositories you want. I am not going to lie, parking in Boston is expensive. And so it's also the driving can be a little stressful for certain people. So you may want to just park your car and rely on other ways of getting there. Some of the communities do have some kind of public transit, especially, buses are very common regardless of a lot of the places that you may visit. Uh, and many of them will have some kind of a smart card that you can use now. In other words, the where you can either buy a pass for X amount of time or X amount of trips, or a combo pass if they have a subway and a bus. If you are flying into Boston, but you want to research in Rhode Island, consider availing yourself of the commuter rail to get there. There's a lot of different ways in which you can maneuver around in the New England states. Here we have the subway map for Boston. And what's great about this little map is the fact that it also has the light purple are the commuter rails. So you can get a sense of where else you might be able to go using the trains that are, beyond that go beyond the limits of the subway. Quite frankly, between this and buses in Boston, that's probably going to be your easiest mode of transportation with, I feel like, the least stress. Obviously, the more rural you're getting, where you may be staying, it may obviously be easier to use a car. And when you're driving, there are some things that we also have to consider. I don't think there is a state in the United States that doesn't have a toll road. A lot of the toll roads in a lot of the states have gone to cashless systems. And so this is something that you may have to keep in mind. Are you going to, if you have flown into, say, Logan, and from there you're getting a car, you may want to consider renting a GPS if you aren't going to hook up your smartphone to the car's system itself. Also, as I mentioned, there will be costs for parking in certain areas within the 6 states. One of the types of electronic toll readers that you can get that is not just limited to a single state is the Easy Pass. And all of the green states recognize the Easy Pass. So you could put your money on it and not worry about, having to look for bills because a lot of the cashless states now, if you don't have a pass, they are sending you a bill based on your the address attached to the license plate. Of course, New England, we have to think about the weather and during the time of year that you may be traveling. New England gets dark early once we flip the clocks to Eastern Standard Time, which of course just happened. This may affect when some cemeteries close. Let's be real, it gets dark about 4:30 p.m. Uh, as we are now into this time zone area. Also, the winter months may see very heavy snowfall. What this means is that may affect the repositories. They could either close or open later due to a snow emergency. Driving in snow is very, very different if you've never done it. It can be something else. Also, the depending on the amount of snowfall, that could also affect the the public transit and its schedule as well. And let's be real, most of us are going to want to walk through a cemetery. It is going to be much harder to do your cemetery visits if we've had a lot of snow. And you also are going, it's going to be colder even if it isn't snowing, so that, you're probably going to have like a heavy outer coat. This means you got to deal with that when you're at the various repositories. So also the further north, the earlier the snow arrives. So in Boston, you may be fine, in Rhode Island and Connecticut, but if you are planning on going into the northern area of Maine, the snow arrives much earlier there. There are also some unique holidays. The two that I'm mentioning here are the probably the most well-known, but you definitely want to check out the calendars of any place you're planning on going, especially if it is a government entity. So in uh, Massachusetts, we have Evacuation Day, which is March 17th. It is only observed in Suffolk County. So if you are planning on going to courthouses in Western Massachusetts, you're fine. Or in, visiting other states. This commemorates the evacuation of the British from Boston that ended the siege of Boston that lasted from 19 April 1775 to 17 March 1776. Another unique Northern holiday, for lack of a better term, is Patriots' Day, spelled one of the two ways I show here. It is now the third Monday in April. It is observed within the New England states by Massachusetts, Maine, and Connecticut. Within Massachusetts, it coincides also with the Boston Marathon. Now, experiencing the Boston Marathon can be a lot of fun, but understand if you were hoping to get a lot done on that day, it's not probably going to happen in Boston because a lot of places are closed, but also just travel within Boston is impacted because they shut down a lot of the roads and items, like subway stops that are along the route. So just keep that in mind as well. But it can be an amazing experience to be in town for that. All right, so let's talk about preparing your research. So the most important thing, I mean, we often think everything is online. That is, of course, not true, but you do need to understand what records are online. There's no point in making a trip to sit and view a bunch of stuff that's online. You could have done that from home. You need to know what repositories are available and where records can be found within those. Know what records are off-site and have to be requested. A lot of repositories have just flat out run out of room. And so certain collections that are not often requested, they store off-site and you may need to request them ahead of time. You're also going to want to reach out to the churches beforehand to assess accessibility. In other words, are they going to be happy to see you or are they going to shut the door and basically say, these are private records, you can't look? Also, there are certain historical cemeteries that remain locked all year round unless you reach out and request that they be open so that you can go in and, you know, walk that cemetery. Researching is going to be the biggest part of your preparation in any trip you take. Um, but of course, if you are going to spend like a week, you want to maximize your time. So the preparation is your biggest thing when it comes to any kind of trip.
Hi, Rhonda. Just coming on to check. It seems that your audio may have cut out. Are you still with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, we can. Yes, so I think we heard this last tip. Researching requires the most preparation. But
Okay.
yes, I'll let you continue on.
All right. Thank you. So, yeah, you want to spend the most time in your preparation of what it is you want to accomplish while you are on the trip. And some of the ways to prepare for your research, Google. You want to Google the local repositories, local churches, archives. Uh, do they have central depositories for different things? And then as you're visiting the various places that you hope to actually do active research, you want to make sure and read any and all visiting us type pages. It could be part of their planning a visit, it could be visiting us, anything that is talking about physically coming to their building, you definitely want to read. I even go so far as to reach out via email ahead of my trip in certain places where maybe they have indicated that they don't have a lot of space for researchers and things like that. When you're preparing, you're going to want to spend time using the online catalogs and finding aids. You definitely are going to need to prioritize collections. And then you have to consider the limitations of items that you may be able to bring into the research or reading rooms. So online catalogs have become much more common than they were even just a few years ago. I really encourage you to search these well before your trip. Take time to familiarize yourself with the catalog, how it works, what search terms work better. This is, if you're doing this long before you're coming, this means you have no pressure on yourself that you're losing valuable on-site time. So if you make a mistake searching the catalog and you get 5,000 hits instead of 10, it's no big deal. You want to find a if you're having trouble with a catalog, in other words, trying to get to exactly what you want, what you should do is to start looking through entries that have popped up, find a record that is of interest. Maybe it's a similar time period or it's similar subject. And then consider looking at that catalog entry. How is it formatted? With the basic things like the author and so on. And then consider looking at the subject links to see how they are cataloging those subject links, because you might be able to click on a subject link to get more of the items that you are interested in. So here we have the Rhode Island Historical Society's online catalog. Their catalog is called the Cabinet. Pretty much all of the different catalogs have a name, and they're all dramatically different from each other. I think they plan it that way. I did a very, very simple search here. I literally just put in the word Quakers and got, 1 to 25 of the 103 search items that the Historical Society has. And so there are many different things that the kind of the tidbit catalog entry shows us. We've got the title. I know this is a map. It shows the meeting places of Quakers throughout Rhode Island and New England. And then I have media options over on the right, none of which appear to be active. In other words, this is not something that's been digitized and can be accessed from online. This is an entry from the Massachusetts Historical Society's catalog. Their catalog is called Abigail, and this happens to be for the Joseph Pierpont account book. And so we can see relevance at the very, very top. The more of those little bars you see, the more relevant the catalog felt this item was to my original search. And you get the call number, the creator, which in this case, because it is an account book, is the actual man who had the account book, a description. We do get a scope and maybe a little bit of info, but look at the various subject headings here. So if I were trying to find other account books, I might use one of those two subject headings, account book 1785 to 1787, or account books 1814 to 1829. If I am interested in someone who was a bricklayer and this popped up, I could, or in the brick trade, now I have a subject heading that will focus me in on those of the brick trade. So this is why I'm talking about, if you can't get exactly what you're looking for, get something that looks close and then see if one of the subject links will give you a better shot of finding just what you want. If it's been digitized, so in other words, if they indicate that something is online, then it is very unlikely that they are going to allow you to view the originals. Generally speaking, when something has been digitized or microfilmed, they want you to use those such that they can preserve and protect the original documents in question. So a lot of the repositories that we're going to talk about have these manuscript collections that can be multiple boxes. And as a result, there may be a finding aid to a collection. Uh, these are generally somehow addressed or linked in the catalog entry. They are essential to any large collection because they're going to give us an inventory of the files and boxes. Large collections cannot be requested full out. There may be 60 boxes. They are not going to bring you all 60 boxes. They're going to bring you ones that have specific items of interest to you. So again, here we have from the Massachusetts Historical Society's Abigail catalog, and this happens to be for the Amory family papers that date from 1697 to 1894. There are a couple of things that I want to call out here. Now, the first thing is the call number gives you the manuscript, and then next to it, there is a grayed out button that says request unavailable. And the reason that this is grayed out is if you look further down at the description, which is like 3 rows down, you will see that this is 181 cased volumes, 3 boxes, and 5 oversized boxes. So this is a massive collection. And what they want you to do is through the electronic resource, you can use the guide to this collection. So in essence, the big arrow is saying, click here, that's what you want to do. And what you get is a finding aid. And sometimes you can get the finding aids as a PDF. This one is pretty much just a hot linked version. Up in the upper right, you can see I have put a box around the table of contents. So most finding aids have a very, standard format. There's a collection about a collection summary. There may be an abstract, and then there is often biographical sketches. for the individuals, especially if it's family papers, but even if it's business papers, there's often biographical sketches on the individuals who were part of the business. Below that, you're going to find the collection description, acquisition information, and then organization. What we really want, though, is the detailed description of the collection, which I have highlighted in yellow within the table of contents. Clicking on that is going to take us down to a breakdown of all of the different parts of this collection. So remember, there were 181 cases. Many of these were bound volumes of one form or another. And so what I did was I went down to the second section that was called Personal Papers, 1725 to 1890. And specifically the bound volumes from 1811 to 1871, and further thereunder, Mehitable, Sullivan, Cutler, Amory's diaries and memoranda books from 1811 to 1838. And we see that the diaries are then identified as individual volumes within the larger collection. And now you can see that if I wanted specifically her diary that was from 1812 to 12 July 1813, volume 42, over to the right of volume 42, I now have that request button that allows me to put in a request for that to be pulled. If there is a PDF file for the finding aid, I really recommend that you save that to your computer for a number of reasons. There are going to be situations where you may be thinking, oh, what am I going to do tomorrow? Maybe you don't have internet at that moment. If you've already got the finding aid as a PDF, then you can just pull it up onto your computer, whether you're attached to the internet or not. And I mentioned prioritizing collections. It is unlikely that in your trip you are going to get the opportunity to look at everything. So what you want to do is to ask yourself, what am I most interested in this trip? Am I specifically focusing on certain people or places? Is there a period in history that I really, really want to focus on? Or are you doing a larger research option of a historical subject? You know, how you answer that question is going to affect the types of records and resources that you are looking for in the various repositories. So the more you prepare ahead of time, the more you will accomplish while you're on site. Consider limitations within the reading rooms. So some repositories may have a place where you can put in your request, and then you go into a special room where they're going to pull those manuscripts for you. It is within that research or reading room that you will find the biggest limitations. And this is because the manuscripts are one of a kind, and the goal is to protect and preserve them. So you may be able to take a laptop, tablet, and or tablet, your cell phone, as long as it's on vibrate, and a digital camera. You may need to verify that ahead of time, but definitely know how to turn your flash off on a digital camera. Most places are pencils only. I see even some repositories where they don't even want you to have an eraser on the top of the pencil. So keep that in mind. If you are someone who sometimes goes from warm to cold, can you bring a sweater? And if so, must you have it on you at all times? And some repositories have what is called identified scratch paper. Either it's a colored paper or they've punched a hole in it or they've put a stamp on it or something so that as you are leaving the research room, they know that that was not a part of the collection that you had them pull. Here is the New Hampshire Archives Research Room. This is pretty much what they look like. You may not see long tables like this. Some places have separate smaller tables for an individual to sit at. Again, trying to limit how many people are around a particular collection. However, this is pretty standard. it's an empty table. There may be some type of lighting. Lighting is not great. So, any pictures that you are taking are going to maybe be a little dark. Plan on that. And the these kind of fancy little, you know, lights often will give like light to part of it, but shadow on the rest of it. You also need to make sure that your computer is fully charged when you get there, because not all reading rooms have uh, a plug, a way to continue to use your power. All right. My goal whenever I go anywhere to research on site is to digitize on site and read later. And so basically, my approach is that the time in in the repository, regardless of where it is that I am going to have requested the folders, the collection parts that are of interest to me. I am not necessarily going to go through page by page looking to see if there's anything specifically interesting in that exact folder. I pulled the folder because it sounds like it might be of use to me. And depending on how many hours I've got in a particular repository, I may just take pictures of the whole thing and then take it all back to me, to the hotel, and then I can go through it as to see what I may actually need or if it didn't have anything of interest. Whether you're using your smartphone or your digital camera, you want to verify that the images are clear before you turn back in the collection and say you don't need it. And then I really recommend that you, especially with a digital camera, that you copy the images off of the camera, put them on your computer each night back at the hotel, so that if heaven forbid something happens, you haven't lost all of those. They are somewhere, and usually, at least on my computer, it's also connected to a cloud. So when I put them there, they also get uploaded to the cloud. So I've got a second copy there as well. There are also many new smartphone apps that offer, photography features, but also can help you like in creating PDFs of the items, etc. These are a few of the apps for digitizing. The Adobe Scan is available for both Android and iOS. For anyone who uses an iPhone, I really, really love Scanner Pro. That is my go-to. I have used it in a number of different repositories, and it basically allows me to do a little outline, and whatever's in that outline is what I'm going to take a picture of. There is also VFlat available for Android and iOS. There's something called Scanner app for iOS, and then there is Genius Scan available for both Android and iOS. Basically, this is kind of what it may look like. So this is Scanner Pro, the one that I use. And I have I have gone through many, many file folders in certain repositories. And like I said, I'm just taking picture after picture, and I'm not looking at anything until I get back to my hotel room. And so you can see here that each new item that I take pictures of starts a new, like basically file. And the upper two in the left hand have not yet finished uploading to the cloud when I took this particular screenshot. And then the right hand item is of a file folder itself. And you can see that this outer file folder cover is the first of 126 images that I took, which was basically this entire folder here. If you are going to use your smartphone for taking all those pictures, most of those apps are going to suck the battery life of your smartphone. So plan on bringing a couple extra power banks and or a USB cord or something that can either connect to your computer to draw power from, some way to keep your smartphone going while you are taking all those pictures. All right. Logs, logs, logs. Let's be real. research logs are very, very important, especially when we are doing one of these, like, gotta hit and get as much as I can from a repository, and then I'm going to go home and figure out everything I did. This becomes essential to your understanding everything you accomplished, what was good, what was bad. And so, create a list that you wish to view by repository. Very often I copy and paste from the online catalog. You can either put it in a word processing program or a spreadsheet program. You can even, if you're are not using like an online tree like Ancestry and have an actual genealogy software program on your computer, they all have to-do lists or research logs that may allow you to copy and paste. And then I really encourage you to make notations while you are actively researching to ensure you remember. So, you've got this one thing, you pulled it. It may be a simple notation of took pictures of everything, just so that you remember what you did, and then consider including the file names of the images in your log so that later on you can easily grab those and put them somewhere appropriate, either on your computer, on an external hard drive, or whatever. So here is just using a word processing program. This happens to be from Pages. You can do the same thing with Word, depending on whether you're Mac or Windows. And what I did is I kind of copied and pasted a part of the finding aid that was on basically on a web page, and grabbed the important parts. So the database, the format, the call number, the title, the description. I also did grab the scope, additional forms that were available, and local finding aid, which this one did not have, and local notes in large part so that I could understand the overall combination of these, in this case, two boxes. And basically by knowing that the finding a, like all of the items in these two boxes are separately identified, meant that there could have been multiple entries in the catalog that I have pulled up that pertain to this same collection. And then I'm a big one for color if you've been to any of my other webinars. And so in this instance, I was just using red largely so that I could just say, hey, I did this. I grabbed there was this particular document here, and made notes about the writing, because let's be real, the further back we go, everything is written in some kind of handwriting. Some of the older letters are what they call silked. In other words, they've had that kind of see-through silking put over the original document to keep it together, and that can affect things. That's why we often, when we see microfilmed documents, sometimes they're super dark because they were silked. And so there is, I'm saying, yes, I started there, but I put these on the back burner. They weren't quite what I was looking for, and I moved on to the next set. Okay, so this is a notebook app for a tablet, any kind of tablet that you have. I have an iPad and I use and abuse it frequently. And so in this instance, because it was a tablet and this little notebook app, I was able to copy and paste, like basically do a little screenshot of the catalog entry in question and pop that little image in. And then underneath that, I put like the word results, and then I would make space on the page in the tablet so that I could have a place to put my notes on it. And you know, you can see on the top one that the item in question, I did request it, and that there was nothing on the people I was looking for, but I photographed some other interesting examples of records because, let's be real, I always need examples for lectures. And then the bottom item, I put that it was not indexed because that again affects what I can accomplish. And so basically, my go-to is photograph all the pages and read it later. And then this is another notebook app that is actually available for a computer. There are a number of these types of programs that you can use. OneNote is available for Microsoft, anybody who's got Microsoft. And so this allows me to break up the collection of not only my preparations, so family group sheets and things, and what records, census records I may have found and why, but then also to create my photo log of the different collections that I was working on. And so I've kind of highlighted part of the photo log, and you can see over on the far right that the contents is kind of blue there. And then if I clicked on any of these items here in the contents, it's going to take me to the correct tab in the notebook. And here you can see the photo log that in this instance was coming from a specific collection of Old North Church records. And then I had broken it down by the date. I was there for like a week, so I did include my date. The repository was Massachusetts Historical Society. The specific source that I was working on, because it is a massive collection, as you can see, 52 document boxes, 75 volumes. So I was specifying what I was working on, like box 46, and then I would put the photo numbers that the camera was creating as it took the pictures in this particular item, and then I can grab those specific pictures and put them into a folder onto my computer under, the file folder of Old North Church and whatever it was I was working on. So there are many different types of repositories, and so let's spend a little time talking about those. Um, I'm not going to lie, if you're planning on coming to New England, you probably should get the sixth edition of the Genealogist Handbook for New England Research. Yes, am I partial to this as editor of it? You bet. However, it was updated, published the sixth edition in 2022. It shows all the state level repositories and then some of the local repositories that are of more interest, allowing you to at least have the name of a repository that you might want to Google. Are the URLs all still accurate? No, it's been 3 years. And if we know nothing about the internet, URLs change all the time. However, the name of the repository is likely still the same, and you can then Google it and get to the page. Here you'll see that we have part of the Vermont chapter out of the Genealogist Handbook in the repository section, and the first up in most of the chapters that are devoted to the states, we put the state archives, state library, and Department of Health as the first repositories. And then, as I said, just go in and Google or, Bing, however you're doing your searches, DuckDuckGo, and just type in Vermont State Archives and Records Administration, and then see what pops up. Other places that you might like to go, especially in New England, town halls, because a lot of the records are on the town level, cemeteries, churches, genealogical libraries, and historical societies. Town halls, remember, they are open to do the business of the town. They may not have a lot of staff. They may have limits to the number of records you can request. Some town halls are so excited to see people that they will like take you to the room where all the books are and just let you run amok. Um, you know, you're not quite sure what's going to happen until you get to one of these repositories. You may even want to reach out to them ahead of time and say, hey, is there, if I come, will I be allowed to look at the original records? They may tell you no, they've all been microfilmed or they've all been digitized, anything like that. So anytime you're working with a town hall, I like to reach out first. Cemeteries, again, you got to check the hours that they are open. Remember that historic cemeteries may normally be locked, and that you may need to contact somebody ahead of time, and they'll tell you like how far in advance you need to let them know so that they can unlock it for you. Um, Many, especially in some of our bigger cemeteries, especially King's Chapel and the other one is escaping me. However, the tombstones were rearranged to make them look pretty. So they may not actually be over the person that is buried somewhere in there. Also, there may be many published volumes of, again, some of these bigger ones, such as King's Chapel. A good guide, at least for Massachusetts, if you are interested in the cemeteries and what may have been published, is David Allen Lambert's A Guide to Massachusetts Cemeteries. Here is through the cemetery section of the city of Boston. This is the Dorchester North Burying Ground, and it does indicate that you do have to reach out to them ahead of time. And below what I have highlighted with the little red rectangle, you see contact Parks and Recreation. You need to let them know 24 hours in advance that you wish to access that particular burying ground. Churches, definitely contact them ahead of time. They may no longer hold their older records, especially if they have a hierarchy. Congregational churches are pretty much in unto themselves, but most other organized religions like the Lutherans, the Episcopals, the Catholics, they have a hierarchy, and they may also have archives. And so the older volumes may have been turned over to an archive to protect them. They may not be willing to let you look at them, even if they do have them in their specific church. Um, Church records are considered a private record. And so sometimes if you can let them know ahead of time and kind of grease the wheels and be very, very nice with them, they may let you look at them. Whereas if you just show up cold to the church, they may not be prepared. They may not have the staff to help you. And so anytime you can let people know or know that you can or can't look at something, you don't want to waste time on your trip. Other archives, any other type of repository, the things you want to know, hours of operation, go through those online catalogs. Certain repositories may require a pre-registration for a reader card or something. Sometimes they require appointments. Again, look to see what you're allowed to bring in with you. And if you yourself have any special requirements, such as health issues, wheelchairs and things, or they may also have special requirements that you must go through. In other words, filling out a form saying why you want to look at a particular collection, etc. And I have included here the major repositories for each of the states, large part so that those of you who are looking at the website or at the webinar can get those links. For Connecticut, we have the Connecticut State Archives, the Connecticut State Library, the Connecticut Museum of Culture and History, and then Godfrey Memorial Library, which is a very good genealogical library for, Connecticut. In Maine, your main repositories are the Maine State Archives, Maine State Library, and the Maine Historical Society. Remember, Maine, very, very big, very, very rural in some areas. And so Maine sometimes can be one of the harder ones to research in. Speaking of Maine, remember that Maine was part of Massachusetts until 1820. With that said, we never call it Massachusetts. However, keep in mind that some of the earlier records may be found in Massachusetts repositories rather than in Maine repositories. For Massachusetts, not surprisingly, they have a lot of major repositories. There's the Massachusetts State Archives, the Massachusetts State Library in completely two different sections of the city in two different buildings. There is the Massachusetts Judicial Archives, the Massachusetts Historical Society, American Ancestors. You can't come to Boston and not stop by and see us. And then the City of Boston Archives as well. New Hampshire's major repositories is the New Hampshire Division of Archives and Records Management, the New Hampshire State Library, and the New Hampshire Historical Society. Rhode Island's major repositories are the Rhode Island State Archives, the Rhode Island State Library. Like Massachusetts, Rhode Island also has a Supreme Judicial Court Records Center, and then there's the Rhode Island Historical Society Research Library. Vermont's major repositories, Vermont State Archives and Records Administration, the Vermont State Library, and Vermont Historical Society. Always check the hours for potential closures. Maybe they're renovating a part of the building. Maybe they've moved collections off site because of that. Maybe they're moving buildings or moving back into their building. Before you go or before you plan a trip, make sure that they are actually going to be open. So in review, know as much about your ancestor as possible. Consider the focus of your trip because that's going to affect how you plan. Always, always, always use online catalogs to have a set of items to prepare for using in the repositories. Remember, the time of year will affect your trip. Research what is available locally, things that maybe are only in this little one-off historical building in the town, and digitize there and read later.
All right. Thank you so much, Rhonda, for that great lecture this afternoon. We'll get to questions that have been coming in just a moment, but first, I just wanted to quickly share some upcoming events that might be of interest to you all. So first up, this should be a December date here. We have an author event, The Wounded Generation, Coming Home After World War II with author David Nassau, and that will be moderated by journalist Mike Barnacle. Then on December 11th, we have From Dates to Stories, How Timelines Can Transform Your Family History Research. That will be another online webinar presented by Rhonda. And then we have a December online course coming up. This will be a 5-week course researching in New England town records, 17th through 19th centuries. And that will be presented by our genealogist David Allen Lambert, Rhonda as well, and also Melanie McComb. You can learn more about all of these upcoming events at americanancestors.org/events. All right, so now let's get to your questions. So first up, Rhonda, we have a question here from Jeff who asks, he says, my latest count is that I have 70 ancestors who immigrated to New England before 1640, which can be a bit overwhelming. Is this common, and any ideas on how I can get a handle on all of these people and the best way to proceed?
Actually, it is if you go back to the original colonies, the odds are that you will have many immigrants. And so one of the things for, depending on where your immigrants are, if they are in, specifically in the New England states like Massachusetts and whatnot, you may want to start out with with Robert Charles Anderson's directory of that he has done it, that's just been updated, that is about that 1620 to 1640 period. That will lead you to a number of like published articles that might help you in figuring out what would be good sources for you to use. Obviously, you want to have all of this either in a computer, a genealogy program, or in a tree somewhere, whether it's an online tree or a genealogy program. And you may even want to, if you are doing it with a genealogy program on your computer, See if they offer color coding so that you can highlight those immigrants. And that way they're going to stand out to you, maybe in the index list or certainly on your tree to know that they are that immigrant. You're not going to be able to research them all together at the same time. You're going to have to pick and choose. So if there's one that's been a little harder to get info on, that might be the person, the family and the families that interact with that person might be the better one to use when you're on a research trip.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Rhonda. Then a question from James who asks, for delicate archives, do we need to bring gloves?
Archives will determine whether or not you need to wear gloves or use any special cradles for volumes. Um, Many archives have gotten away from the gloves because it affects how we can hold a page to turn it. They've discovered that it, in some situations, does actually cause more harm to the document because you're having trouble, you know, just getting one page. But more often than not, they'll determine whether they supply the gloves. You won't have to bring them, but they may request that you use weights, or they may supply you with a number of different, like either foam cradles or plastic cradles, so that the spine of a particular volume isn't like laid flat and broken. So they will do all of that for you.
Okay, thank you. Then a question here from Dan who asks, any quick thoughts on researching Irish famine immigrants in New England, key repositories and record sets, perhaps?
I mean, there's the Finding Missing Friends database that was, the ads that were put into the Boston Pilot. The Boston Pilot newspaper has been microfilmed, and I don't know if the images have been digitized, but certainly the ads have been abstracted and created into a database. Uh, Boston College does have a very impressive Irish collection, studies collection. Um, you would most likely need to reach out to them in advance to find out if, as a non-student, what kind of hoops you have to jump through to be able to get access to it. In such a case, I would probably say you were researching famine Irish, not I'm researching my family tree. Take it from the historical standpoint rather than an individual. Those would be my off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you. Then a question about researching African Americans in New England. Are you aware of any special collections for that research or any guides, anything like that?
So within our databases, we do have a couple of items. There is and the title is escaping me at the moment. I think it's Free Persons of Color is the name of the database. And you know, uh, there are likely to be some resources at Mass Historical Society um, about the individuals who were enslaved in the early time frame before they realized that wasn't such a good thing. I remember working in a collection at one point where there was an African American woman who was basically suing based on the reading of a particular document at the State House. And, so you want to look at, I would probably do a search on um, enslaved or African American, and then look at like history, or put it in if there's years in the catalog that you're looking at, if you can specify the years, the time frame you're most interested in, and try that.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then we got a question in, are there typically fees, and if so, what would they be, charged to access records or time from the staff at repositories?
I am unaware of any fees for like going into the various state archives and historical societies. I've never been charged one when I've gone to the various places I've been to. However, if you want like top-notch images of particular documents, either because you're going to publish it in a book or something, then that's where you may get fees involved. So as long as you're just taking pictures and stuff for your own personal research, there tends not to be a fee. They may make you sign a piece of paper saying, these are just for my personal research. I'm not going to publish them or anything, that type of thing. But just to go in, I have not had any fees. With that said, of course, certain private libraries may have like a day fee that offsets the expense of the staff because they are not supported in any other way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Then a question here. I would like to visit cemeteries on private land. What is the best way to find out who the owner is, and what would be the best way to reach out to them, especially if the property is a rental?
So I mean, if a cemetery is on private land, but it is old enough, it may be in some listing within either the city or the county or state, depending on uh, where you're looking. Let's be real, private land is private land, and it can be very difficult. Now, if the you could reach out to the either, so in Rhode Island, it would be on the town level because everything's on the town level. Most of the, and Vermont is also on, Vermont, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, land is on the town level. The other three, it's on the county level, and maybe you can do a search as to the current owners of the land, and then you'll have to reach out and see if you can find a way to contact them. Sometimes, one of those like find a people type sites might help you in getting an email or a phone. Those do sometimes have fees, but at least it would give you something. And then you could see if they would be willing to allow you to go and look at the tombstones on that land.
Okay, thank you, Rhonda. I think we've got time for about one or two more questions here. We got a question here from Ellen for recommendations for where to find almshouse records in Massachusetts, or perhaps you could also speak more broadly to New England as well.
Uh, was it almshouses, like the poorhouses?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So most of the Boston overseers of the poor records uh, are, I believe, housed at the Mass Historical Society. There's a giant book that was published some years ago that indexes all of that. I would literally use the term overseers of the poor in your search. I would even maybe make it a phrase, and then whatever the town is that you're interested in the various catalogs.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then I think whenever you talk about how you use your iPad, people are always curious about that. So we did get a question about what notebook app you use for your iPad.
So I actually used two. The one that I showed in this particular lecture was Notability, and then the other one I use is GoodNotes. And GoodNotes, you can get a lot of different templates for like different, how many like how many tabs there is, like a 12 subject, a 25 subject kind of notebook. Notability, it is more of um, it's already like structured, but they have some really kind of cool stuff in it now where I can interact with it, literally like talk to it, because AI is becoming all the rage. Um, I use the two depending on what the focus is or how many things I know I'm going to need to do, like a separate like note. Notability literally has subjects, and then under the subject, I have separate items. And whereas with the good notes, most of those are your traditional notebook of I've got a tab, divider, and then I've got pages. So it depends on if I want to have everything with a separate name of it, or if I'm just treating it like an ongoing, you know, I'm in school taking notes kind of thing.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Rhonda, again for the great lecture today and for fielding those questions. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today. But if you do have more specific questions about your family history research, you might consider hiring our research services team or using our expanded chat service as well. The free chat service puts you in direct communication with a genealogist. And again, it's totally free and it's open to the public and available Tuesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. To access that service, you can just go to americanancestors.org/chat, and it would be a great place to ask the questions that we weren't able to get to today and get those answers. You can also book a one-on-one consultation with our experts at the link shown on the screen or through the QR code displayed there as well. I'll also mention that Rhonda is one of our genealogists who gives a lot of these consultations, so you could even book one with her if you'd like to do that. And thank you again for joining us today. As you leave the program, you'll have the opportunity to fill out a survey and give us your feedback. As we continue to expand our webinars and online offerings, any and all feedback is extremely helpful and appreciated. This free webinar was made possible by the generous support of our members and friends around the world. Please consider making a gift to American Ancestors to keep these programs free and to create more free programs in the future. I hope to see you all at our online programs in the future, and goodbye for now.